So, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're tuning in. Welcome to DappRadar Market Movers. After a short pause, we're back to talk about the most relevant trends happening in our exciting Dapp industry. We're talking about DeFi, NFTs, and games, of course. And with me today, we have Sara Gargalas and Boris Ribo, part of DappRadar's research team. How are you doing today, guys?
Hey Pedro, hey, always glad to be back here. Always nice to have market movers after a short sojourn. We're back, and I'm glad to be back here again.
Yeah. Hello, Pedro. Thank you for having me here. Can't wait to have this started.
Perfect. Good, good. Already October. Time flies.
Yeah, it's getting nippy out there.
Yeah. So a lot of things have happening in the industry over the last months. And one thing that we cannot deny is that the macroeconomic scene is quite challenging right now. Ever since the war in Ukraine started back in February, yeah, the capital markets are suffering, not performing quite well, and that of course translates into the crypto industry. But apart from that, in May, we suffer one of the most important events that affected our industry, which is the collapse of Terra, one of largest DeFi ecosystems, which basically vanished 50 billion from the industry, which is brutal. And also, we have another event, but that one is on the positive side, which is the Ethereum merge, which of course altered and changed things quite a bit in the industry. So why don't we start having a bit of context and talking about how does these events affected the industry over the last months? And maybe let's imagine Q3 as our parameter to explain what happened in the last 3 months in the industry.
Well, to start off, Q3 is the very strange time. It could be the tipping point. It's a watershed moment. On one side, we can this because a lot of indicators have stabilized, and it's been a relative period of calm where we haven't got any significant drops in terms of NFT sales and volumes. Some of the indicators are actually going up. So it's the question now. Usually, around this time, cyclically speaking, we had was the time to rebuild, and near the end of the year, usually the market begins to pick up. On the other hand, we still have a lot of the lingering issues in the macroeconomic scene where we have increasing rates, the war, unfortunately, is still going on, and inflation is still going through the roof too. In a lot of places in the UK, it's over 10% right now. So uh, it is a very precarious time. On the other hand, so we'll see where we go. I personally would like to stay optimistic.
So definitely macro indicators are not bullish, but on-chain indicators, the ones that we are tracking directly from the blockchain, tell another story. Sarah, do you want to dive deeper into what on-chain indicators are telling us?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So when it comes to the DeFi, we observe that actually the DeFi TVL increased by 2.9% this quarter, reaching 69 billion, which is a lot. Um, and Ethereum, it's still, the dominant DeFi protocol. Another thing that we saw that the industry unique active wallets increased by 12%, and as of right now, we have 1.8 million unique active wallets, but it's still down 25% from the second quarter. By the way, if you have the graph, you can show the graph. Um, and for the other part, as you said before, exactly, we can see, like it's a slow, it's increasing right now. Everything is recovering, and we saw how games are a very big part of that. And this is what we saw this quarter. Games represent 50%, almost 50% of the industry usage, which is a very bullish sign for this industry category. Then what we saw, how you previously said, we had a big event happen. It was the Ethereum merge, and we measured the impact on the Ethereum merge on the layer 2, and we saw how Optimist and Arbitrum actually increased a lot during this merge. And this show us that even if Ethereum starts becoming better and starts increasing, the layer 2 protocols will still have a place in this market and in this industry.
Yeah, agree with you. And the chart clearly showed how the industry and the interest and the activity in the industry decreased around May, but now is slowly getting back. And this is what we refer as on-chain indicators. And because the price action of the most important cryptos is, let's say, has been remaining stagnant for the last 2 or 3 months. Bitcoin has been floating around 22,000 to its important line of support around 19K. Same for Ethereum, which has been floating between 12 and 1400. So nothing too major happening in terms of price action for the major cryptocurrencies. But the activity that we are measuring by reading the smart contracts of the more than 12,000 dapps that we're tracking signal another outlook. So that it's super useful to know that the industry is still, even though it's a negative sentiment around the markets, the crypto industry it's still on a very positive note.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm
I want
gonna,
to said something.
yeah,
Sorry, Pedro. Sorry for interrupting you.
no,
Another, like maybe bullish sign is the fact that the sales count it's actually increased, and when it comes to the NFT sector, and this is a very positive sign because this means that even if the indicators and when it comes to maybe trading volume is down, we saw that people and in this industry are still very active and people are still selling and buying, which is a very bullish sign. And Pedro,
definitely. And
sorry.
actually, it seems that you read my mind because I was going to shift the conversation into the NFT market, which is something that our community is very curious about, and I think that's the overall sentiment in the crypto space. So yeah, you're right, and it's unquestionable that NFT appears to be the bubble of NFTs appear to be popped. That is what everyone is saying, that NFTs have collapsed. The bubble has finally popped. And if you look up at the volumes purely from the economic perspective and the financial one, the volumes measured in US dollars have decreased quite a lot over the last time, over the last few months. Since in Q3 and Q4 of last year, second half of 2021, we get around NFT generated around 22 billion in US dollars. Then in the first quarter of this year, we saw around 12 billion in NFTs. And since then, it's been falling down. And in Q3, if we measure trading activity of NFTs in Q3, we barely surpassed 2.5 billion with 2.7 billion in the last 3 months. What are your takes on this? Because you were talking about sales count and other blockchain indicators that can complement your analysis. So what can we make from the current state of the NFT market?
Personally, if I may interject at this point, I mean, I keep hearing the same stories, like the NFT market that's collapsing for like the umpteenth time this year, and still it's still here. I honestly completely reject the notion that it has, because if you look at the statistic that we posted in the report, as you just mentioned previously, that in the beginning, in the first quarter of last year, we had 1.2 billion. Then in the second quarter, 1.3 billion, which is an increase of roughly 10%, so it's fine. Then when we go to the third quarter of 2021, it increased tenfold. Those are crazy numbers. And since then, it's been around there for nearly two consecutive quarters, and then it became to come down in 2022. So, when you have an astronomical parabolic rise going from 1 billion to 12 literally in one quarter, those are unsustainable numbers. And according to the traditional investing theory that keeps reasserting itself, everything is cyclical, and the crypto market is no different. What we have right now is that we have a regression to the mean, and we're going back to the numbers that we had in the first quarter of 2021. And we've actually surpassed that. So just to reiterate, in the first quarter of 2021, we had 1.2 billion organic volume, and now we are in 2.7 billion. So we actually, not only did we regress to the mean, we're actually improving from the mean. So if we assume that what happened during the last 8 quarters was an anomaly, statistically speaking, because it was a great boom. It was a bubble, sure, but when bubbles pop, you regress to the normal standing of the market, and then we're picking up where we dropped off a year ago.
Which is even more bullish when you consider a year ago the price of ETH was around 4,000, and now it's around 1,200. So basically, you need to trade 4 times to get to the volume generated 1 year ago, right? So
yeah, which reiterates the point that Sara made, is that we have a significant trading activity at lower prices, which means there's a lot more demand going on.
And another indicator we saw is the number of unique traders count. This indicate how many new people come into this industry, and in comparison to quarter 2, we have an increase of 36%, which is this means 30% of the people that right now are selling and buying are new joiners, and this shows us that the industry, it's there, it's in demand, and new people want to join it. And another thing we discovered is the average holding days of the most important collection, and we saw how the NFT industry is actually maturing, right? Because people are not flipping their NFT, and they are holding their NFT longer. And we saw that CryptoPunks is the highest crypto collection, NFT collection, with 238 days. Then we have Bored Ape Yacht Club with 129, and etc. So we see how important the community is. We observe how the market is maturing, and we saw how the traders and investors decides to hold their NFT and to benefit of the community and of the community perks, let's say, that the collection has.
Actually quite interesting, and I totally agree with you that we are seeing an evolution and maturity of the NFT market. In my perspective, I think we are getting to a point where NFT traders are also becoming, they are not too rational, but they are becoming rational to some extent. They are starting to price the NFTs on a more logical scale. We saw NFTs like, I remember the Metaverse, this NFT that was launched start of the year or end of 2021, like being sold for millions, and the floor price now it's below 1 ETH. So you see how people could be aping into a project just for the pure FOMO sentiment, and I think that's still strong, but they are not overpaying as much as we saw in the previous periods.
Yeah, and something that we observe is, I think, a concentration, let's say, of the blue chip collection. So investor and people are only looking and are investing in this bear market in the blue chip collection. And in September, 42.2% of the whole NFT market cap was dominated by the 4 projects of Yuga Labs. So we are seeing a centralization of this of Yuga Labs and this blue chip project, which shows us again how the market is evolving and is maturing.
Is it centralization or is it dominance?
I think dominance, not to centralization. You're right. Dominance of the market.
And talking about dominance, OpenSea was the de facto marketplace, and probably how we learned about NFTs in the first place. But the dominance of this marketplace has been decreasing over the last months, this year especially. If I'm not mistaken, at the close of last year, OpenSea's dominance was around 85 to 80% of the total NFT volume in the market. Right now, it's around 35 to 40. So basically, it was cut in half. And I want to ask you both, what do you think are the main factors behind the drop in OpenSea's dominance, especially over the last quarter?
Hey, I would say, first of all, just as a preface, it's a very positive development. I think it's always nice when you have actual healthy market competition, and you have alternatives to turn to if one particular marketplace is not to your liking. And then what we actually see here as well is that different marketplaces start specializing in different types of NFTs, in different types of chains, because one marketplace thankfully, cannot cover all the demand in the market. It would be very scary if it was. So despite the fact that OpenSea still stays as a de facto leader in the market, we have things like Magic Eden that specializes in Solana. We have X2Y2. There's still issues when it comes to wash trading, but it's still a very healthy place to buy and sell NFTs, especially those for much more affordable prices than they are at OpenSea. You have GameStop Marketplace, which is specializing in video game-based NFTs. There's still some controversies when it launched. It's clearly a newcomer, and the start was very rocky. There were some controversies with selling and copyrighted materials and whatnot. So those are growing pains, but essentially it's nice to see that people are trying to getting a feel for the market, looking for different niches, trying to differentiate themselves from the different marketplaces, and that's how we have a more pluralistic environment.
Sarah, anything you want to add?
Actually, Boris covered everything. And it's the first time maybe I will say this, but Boris said everything I wanted to say. And
okay, fair enough. Yeah, to me, it's also interesting to see how the activity is picking up in other chains. Solana, we saw a big increase in their NFT trading activity over the last months. One that I'm particularly surprised is Cardano, which is a network that we just integrated last month. And the NFT activity in Cardano is picking up quite nicely. The floor price of some of the leading collections there, like the Claymates, are increasing. So that's nice to see that it's not only about Ethereum, but it's getting into other blockchains. Which again, it's the same narrative of the dominance. It was OpenSea and just in Ethereum, so it's not anymore. So it's nice to see. Also Flow, of course. Flow with NBA Top Shot and NFL All Day, and that it's also doing a really nice volumes there. Good. So we talked about NFTs. Let's jump into another topic that has been floating around the media for since last week, and it's Decentraland, which some media told that Decentraland, DappRadar is tracking only 38 daily users in Decentraland. That was correct at that time. We updated all the contracts of Decentraland, and now we're seeing the real activity around 800 daily users. So I think it will be interesting to explain to our audience what does a unique active wallet mean and how does it relates to blockchain activity.
Well, the difference there is that it's mostly relates to why it's important to places like Decentraland being an active user environment. A unique active wallet basically is a wallet that has at least one transaction on the blockchain of any particular dApp that it interacts with. A user can essentially interact, or an active user can interact with a dApp, but does not produce any blockchain activity. So this is primarily a mindset to get into when you get, for example, into blockchain games, because not all of them, despite the blockchain game, not all of them produce transactions on the blockchain. Hence, you have a lot of active users without producing blockchain activity. And that's why you have unique active wallets that may be very low because they're not actually producing any transactions, despite there being a lot of users.
Yeah, so maybe in the case of Decentraland, in the case of games, as you say, like Axie Infinity, People can basically log in with their users through a website, through a mobile app, and basically just connect to the game to play a battle, or in the case of Decentraland or the sandbox, just to hover around and see what metaverse experiences are being built in these worlds and so on, without incurring or executing any blockchain transaction per se. So it's quite interesting and important to differentiate between unique active wallets, as you were mentioning, and daily active users, which is off-chain activity happening outside of the blockchain that we are not capable of tracking at this point in time. So it's relevant to know that. And now that we're talking about metaverse, our metaverse report is coming out, and you work hard on that, Sara. What are your main key takeaways from the metaverse report in Q3?
Yeah. Yes, metaverse. I think the metaverse it's something that everyone heard in the past. I think in the past 2 years, especially after Facebook became Meta, and they want to focus on that. What did I find out is that in this, like in this quarter, what happened in the past 4 months since you wrote the last metaverse report, the activity on the metaverse, it's definitely it's not down. It increased and it's increasing. The sales count decreased only by 11%, taken in comparison from quarter 2. And even if the trading volume it's down for the most like major projects, I don't know, other side, the sandbox, we still see an increase in people, in activity, in users. And as we saw, for example, the sandbox, we saw an increase in the sales counts by 190% due to the sandbox alpha season 3. And this sandbox alpha season it had like more than 4.1 million people that registered. They had like over 200,000 daily user that play the game. And it's something, like it's something very, very nice. Something else we saw, for example, in this chart, we saw that NFT words had increased in the sales count by 79%. And actually these were the only two metaverse that they had an increase in the sales count. The increase in NFT worlds was due to the Minecraft ban that happened in July. That was a very tough, let's say, a tough period for NFT worlds and even for NFT in general. And the increase in the sale counts was due to the people that started to sell their land there, because NFT worlds was very connected to the Minecraft game. And another thing we saw in this report, we saw how brands are starting to adopt metaverse and how the governments are adopting it too. And we saw, let's say, a concentration of the adoption in the Asian countries. We saw that South Korea actually invested tons of money, and they are trying to expand their metaverse policy in 2 and 5 years. Japan did it too, and Japan, even in September, they decided to reward mayor with NFTs, which is something, finally we see an utility and adoption from a government. And we saw China, even if they have a ban on cryptocurrency, they don't have a ban in the metaverse, and they decided to invest more than 51 billion in the upcoming years to build their own metaverse. So we are seeing adoption, even if the indicators are down. This adoption is, and the demand is very bullish, let's say, on for this for this piece of crypto industry.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to see how big brands, like you can name anyone, like from the big ones, and you're seeing how they are starting to implement their Web3 strategies through
Exactly.
NFTs, but also considering a high impact in the metaverse. For example, Walmart. No, we saw that they launched. This is not blockchain related, but they launched a couple of experiences in Roblox. which only tells the story. But then you enter the sandbox and see brands from Atari, which are very game related, to the South Morning, China Post, basically any brand, of course, Adidas, a Nike, an Artifact partnership. It's a big one. The use case for the fashion industry is massive. And one that excites me a lot is the partnership between Ticketmaster and Flow, the Flow blockchain. This started, I'm of course I'm an NFL fan, and it started last year when for the playoffs, Flow started to issuing NFTs, ticket NFTs as collectibles for the playoff matches of the NFL. And in the Super Bowl, they awarded 70,000 NFTs to the attendants. So they renewed the partnership, and tickets in NFTs is one of the most important use cases that we are going to see over the next year or years. And this one for me, it's interesting. Boris, what's your take on the metaverse?
Personally, the fact that everyone's investing into it, coming from traditional investing background, you always say follow the smart money, and that's where all the smart money is going right now. So, man, it could be a very rare occasion where smart money is wrong, but house always wins. So probably later rather than sooner, because again, once we're on the next upswing and then the next bull run, that's probably where all the money is going to be made, because we're seeing a lot of activity happening in the backgrounds. A lot of people are building right now, and we see the activity is still happening. It's still there. So once the prices stabilize and things pick up, the next bull run is going to be bigger than the current one.
I don't know, guys, if you had a chance to watch the Meta Connect event last week, but it's quite clear that we're inevitably heading in that direction from the social perspective, but also I think adoption in the business layer is going to also happen and occur in the metaverse. Um, Fortunately, we are on a place where Web3 based metaverse will empower creators and will democratize access and a new token economy for all of us. But yes, the open and interoperable metaverse is one of the most relevant trends to follow. And actually, now that time start to run out, before we wait if there are any questions from the audience, I want to ask you both, in your personal perspective, what are the trends that most excite you and the most expectant ones for Q4 and beyond?
The trend that, as I reiterate what I said in the beginning in here, what I would say doesn't excite me, but is a precarious watershed moment where you don't know where it's going to go. It's the literal fork of either either highway to hell or stairway to heaven. Like, we don't know, either we're going to plunge and things are going to get worse, or other things pick up from here. Usually, cyclically speaking, around this time, starting end of October, November, that's when things start to pick up. Usually Q4 results have usually been good even in the bad years. So at least that's where my betting money is, that we are in that moment where things have stabilized, the activity looks healthy, and we're most
So
likely
when bull run?
when bull run. Subjectively speaking, I think when the war is over, because that seems to be like the wet blanket that drapes the whole market over with everything.
Yeah. And about the trend, Pedro, Boris, he answered about the whole vision of whole, like macro vision of the
Yeah.
industry. For me, a trend as of right now is on blockchain gaming. I think we will see something very nice in the upcoming quarters and years, because as we previously said 50% of the activity is on blockchain gaming, and perhaps gaming will be the new hype. And we saw how move to earn economies and games increase, and we saw sweat economy, which ranked the charts in September. So this is where I'm seeing the next hype, blockchain gaming, definitely.
Also, it's interesting to see how much money game-related projects and metaverse are raising, no? in this same trend. So they will give them more ammunition to build. And actually, it's in a perfect time because even though the investments slowed down a bit in this quarter, they are still on a record pace. And the old saying goes that successful projects build in the bear to enjoy the ride on the bull. So let's keep that in mind, and also a good opportunity to see which projects are really using this crypto winter to build and come back stronger than ever. All right. So I guess that is all for today. I want to thank you, of course, Sara and Boris. We will see each other again in this space soon. And of course, a big thanks to all of you who joined to watch this stream. I really hope that you learned something today. And if you want to go even further down the Dapp industry rabbit hole, we're here to help. Each week we publish around 50 articles. One report have multiple AMAs with leading blockchain projects around the space. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with the Dapp industry news, be sure to follow us in our social media channels: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Discord, and YouTube. And that is all for me and for today. Hope you enjoyed and yeah, learned something. That's all for me. Have a nice evening and have a lovely weekend.
All the
Yeah.
best. Thank you for having me, Pedro.